zero trust is always the best way as a starting point for everybody.
Sure.
And then you look at the various third parties and assess them to see what level of trust you want to establish with them. But it is a large task. I think it's not one size fits all. Look, the attacks have been steadily increasing from 2 years ago when I started to where we are now. We are seeing a 400% increase in our attacks against us. And it is in millions a month. Everybody's facing similar kind of threats.
Okay.
It's social engineering. Mm-hmm. It's wanting to get ransom, money out of you in some way or form, or taking your data. Those are the three.
Yeah. This episode of ITWeb TV is brought to you by ITWeb Security Summit, the must-attend gathering for IT, security, and business decision makers. For more information, visit itweb.coza. Hello and welcome to this very special edition of ITWeb TV. I say special because over the next few weeks, in collaboration with ITWeb Security Summit, we'll be having a few special guests who will be presenting at the summit. They've come into the studio beforehand to have a little chat with us and to shed some insight on what it is they do and what's going on in the security industry. Today, I'm joined by Manoj Puri, Chief Security Officer from Absa. Manoj, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. So we're going to talk about the threats and faced by the bank, some of its activities in cyber defense and the awareness kind of programs that you're running, and then some broader issues and trends. And hopefully, if we've got some time, we'll be taking the crystal ball down and kind of gazing into the future a little bit.
Greetings. I'm Munya Silo, a data scientist working for Indo and Absa Project. Join me and other experts from the 4th to the 6th of June in Johannesburg, where I'll be a keynote speaker in the highly anticipated ITWeb Security Summit. I'm looking forward to sharing insights on the fascinating topics, including the role of international cooperation in addressing cybersecurity challenges, as well as relevant regulation and their implications. See you there.
So, Manoj, if you could tell me and the audience a bit about Absa. I think a number of our viewers are probably going to be in South Africa, but we do have an international reach thanks to YouTube. So for those who aren't aware of Absa Group, can you just give us a quick lowdown, perhaps the size, which countries, or an idea of some of the countries you're in, and yeah.
Sure. So Absa Group is a financial institution. We're headquartered here in South Africa. We operate in 10 countries, 11 banks in 10 countries other than South Africa. We've also got remote offices for our corporate and investment banking businesses in Nigeria, in New York, in London, and we opened one in China today, I think.
Okay.
We've got 900 plus branches, many thousands of ATMs across the continent. And yeah, we've also got development centers in Prague and India. So yeah, we're a financial institution with a global reach.
And roughly how many customers? Are you able to give us that information?
We've got circa 12 million customers currently.
Okay. So then to follow on from that, to give me a bit more about what it is your role entails,
Sure.
What your kind of responsibilities are, what a typical day looks like, and then I would say what takes up most of your time. I imagine it's probably meetings, but like, what does your typical day look like?
Yeah. So I'm responsible for looking after all the assets and securing them for the group. And what I mean by that is anything and everything from digital assets onto physical assets even, to make sure that, one, they're secure, two, we understand our attack surface and then be able to protect it. We pride ourselves in the fact that, we are across the continent, and the rigor that we apply in one area is the same rigor we apply across the entire group. What does a typical day look like? Yes, of course, if you're in a large corporate, meetings are a part of life. But for me, the very first thing when I wake up is actually to look at my phone to see if there is any big incidents or if there's any challenges that have happened overnight, or if any calls that I need to make urgently. And then it starts. I'm very close with my team. I try to have my hands dirty, so to speak. I need to know what's going on. I want to know what's going on. So the first meeting is really with my direct reports as much as possible. And it could be a 5-minute thing. All okay. Check in, really. And then naturally looking at the priorities of the group, or what is going on, whether it's board season, whether it's the time for us to be able to visit our customers, our clients, different aspects of the game. But I think the hardest part is taking time out for ourselves to really reflect, look at where the world is going, and keep some time for research, just reading. And that's always the hard part. And usually we do that after hours, after work is done. But it's really fast-paced. No one day looks like the other, which is good. Mm-hmm. Keeps you on your toes. And it keeps life interesting.
Okay. I know we kind of chatted earlier and said that you're always kind of slightly tense, and you can never kind of feel like you can relax on the job. But what are the kind of biggest challenges? What makes you most tense? Like, what really kind of gets you, stresses you out? What are the big challenges you're facing at the moment, and how are you going about solving those?
Yeah, I suppose, I guess the reason I would say I'm tense is because this job, I believe, is important for you to look at the glass half empty.
Okay. And
what I mean by that is the nature of cybercrime is changing dramatically. In fact, it has changed dramatically over the last 2 years. And not just because of the new technological advancements that have come, but because we are becoming more digital as a population, as a world. And I believe as we become more digital and we become more interconnected, the risks of cyber crimes and threat actors taking advantage of that increases. So your attack surface is constantly increasing. So one of the things that I always am vigilant about is there things that I don't know? Mm-hmm. Because the hardest part of this job is making sure that you never feel comfortable. Because the day you feel comfortable, it means something else is happening that you're not on top of. I really, really believe it's one of the biggest causes you hear about CISOs having burnouts or security teams having burnouts. It's because there's no finality. It's not like a CIO job. Mm-hmm. You look at stability, you look at projects, you know whether you do it properly or not. Here, even if you've done a good job, you don't know the threat actors, how they are, being innovative in trying to perpetuate the crime that is taking place today.
Okay. And I mean, what would you say are kind of the top 3 challenges, the top 3 perhaps technical issues that you're facing? Is it ransomware? Is it kind of internal threats? What are those kind of challenges that you're kind of most concerned about?
So I think everybody talks about ransomware, everybody talks about data leaks and stuff. I think the biggest challenge I see is discipline and cyber hygiene.
Sure.
And that's almost ground zero. And it's a constant thing that you need to monitor and improve on. You can't say I've done it once and then let it go. Mm-hmm. So being on top of your estate and your attack surface and making sure that the cyber hygiene is well managed is probably the hardest challenge. I think the second one we're seeing is third-party risk. So as an organization, and you as an individual are connected with many other people, we're connected with many other organizations.
Sure.
So are we actually comfortable that the third parties that we work with, that they work with fourth parties, do they have that same level of cyber hygiene, vigilance, and cybersecurity that you hold to your standard? And if not, how do you manage that threat? How do you detect it timeously? And how do you manage such relationships? And this is issue, I was discussing at the World Economic Forum with global CISOs, and it's a worldwide issue right now. Cyber poverty is something that we need to understand. And what that term really means is they're organizations that have the capability to invest the right amount of money, the technologies, the skills, and secure themselves. But there's many smaller organizations that are going through cyber poverty. They do not have those skills. They do not have that financial backing. And that increases the threat vector or changes potentially the threat vector if not managed appropriately. So I think those are two big issues. I think if you ask everybody, I can give you the buzzwords. AI, everybody talks about. I think AI is still maturing. I think it's helped the threat actors write you've won the lottery mails better for social engineering.
Yeah.
Deepfakes are worrying, both for voice and for video, and what that does to fraud and social engineering. And these are still evolving. They're nowhere near mature. So I think we have to be, and that's why I made that statement, we have to look at glass half empty and always be at the forefront of how technology is changing and how it can be misused. Whereas I see how it can be used.
Sure.
So we have to always see how it can be misused by threat actors and what we need to do to protect our organizations, our customers, and our assets because of this changing nature of technology and threats accordingly.
Okay, that's interesting. I'd like to, if we can, just kind of delve into a couple of those a bit more. You mentioned about the kind of the third-party threats and the cyber poverty, and I think it's an interesting term. We're obviously in a stage where the smaller organizations, as you say, don't have the resources, the capability to kind of keep up as someone like yourselves with the kind of bigger, better funded banks. So how do you manage that? How do you kind of, do you have to, I guess, have that kind of zero trust? We're not letting you into our circle of trust? Or do you have, what is the best way to go about approaching that?
Look, I think it's different strategies for different third parties. You need to know who are the ones that you need to worry about the most and the ones that you're not too worried about.
Yeah.
Zero trust is always the best way as a starting point for everybody.
Sure.
And then you look at the various third parties and assess them to see what level of trust you want to establish with them. But it is a large task. I think it's not one size fits all. And as I said, with the technology changing and the environment changing, you have to constantly evolve that assessment as well.
Yeah.
So again, it's a simple example is monitoring a third party's external surface and seeing whether they're vulnerable and going and asking them why they haven't patched or done what's required. It gives you indications of who is taking cybersecurity seriously and not. And accordingly, then you decide, and I think this is going to happen more and more globally, where if a certain basic standard of cybersecurity is not met, a large portion of organizations won't be able to do business with others.
Sure. Okay.
Because this is becoming such a big issue from a contagion perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'd like to kind of talk around that kind of cyber awareness within the kind of wider community and population a little bit later on. But the second point that I wanted to drill down in is the kind of the deepfakes and the Gen AI stuff. We've seen the stories about a bank and the CFO's voice being faked and then suddenly paying out money to these kind of scammers. Obviously, at a kind of institution level, and I guess we're kind of coming on to that, kind of how we raise awareness. But at an institution level, you can kind of inform the public, inform your workforce. Be aware of these kind of things. How do you spot a deepfake? I'm sure there's much more kind of goes into it than that. But how do you even tackle that challenge when it could be your customers that are also potentially being scammed?
Yeah, I think cyber. We've started using a word called cyber dexterity.
Okay.
We need to build our sixth sense. When we walk around in South Africa or internationally, you're aware of your surroundings. if somebody comes and suddenly offers you a cell phone, will you take it? You always think twice, right?
Yeah.
But when a phishing mail comes and says you've been sent flowers, we're very quick to click on saying it's digital, so it can't harm me.
Sure.
So we are trying, and again, we've started doing this the last year or so. We're running master classes with some organizations that are helping us devise the right message and keep it updated with the likes of, did you know deepfakes can do this? Voice can be spoofed. And it's hard because we've got 40,000 employees that need to know this and have that cyber dexterity built in them, that sixth sense built in them to say, this does not look right. I'm not the favorite when we run phishing campaigns and we catch people out.
I'm sure.
But it's an important part of explaining to the people that just as you are physically, in the physical world, you're aware of your surroundings, of things that don't look right. There's no free lunch. Become more aware in the digital environment that, people are going to try to take advantage of you. Like you said, in the old days, the Nigerian prince sending you an email was easy to spot.
Yeah.
These days, the emails that are coming with the help of Gen AI, writing for threat actors, they are very sophisticated.
Yeah.
I'll give you a personal example. I went to for my studies last year, and I was there for about a month or so. So I sent a video message to my team, just saying, I miss you, I'm learning a lot, blah, blah, blah. Look forward to coming back. Naturally, we've got some very intelligent people in my team who took my message, spoofed it. In 15 minutes, there was a message on my group saying, this team is the best team. All of you guys were getting raises. So it was a joke, but it was actually a way that they showcased how quickly my voice could have been replicated. And I promise you, 80% of my exco believed it was my voice until they heard the content. Then they knew it was a joke.
Sure.
I'm not giving them raises that easily. So, and these kind of activities are important for our colleagues to know, but not just our colleagues, our customers as well.
Yeah.
So we're definitely looking at, we're running campaigns. We ran one with mindfulness very recently, and we're trying to educate our customers more and more around the threats that they face in this new age, this new world. But I think there's a lot more we can do, and we will be doing in the coming future.
Yeah, sure. Like I said, we'll come on to that a little bit later, if that's all right. So then, we've talked around it, but I'm trying to remember, I think it was Vodacom. I heard the statistic a long time ago, and they were saying, and like I say, it was 5 plus years ago, and they were saying the number of attacks that they faced on a daily basis was into the thousands, might have even been hundreds of thousands in a month. So how frequently is Absa attacked? I can imagine this kind of organizations that aren't holding money are probably under some degree of threat, but where there's the possibility to move funds and kind of where the financial incentives there, I think that's probably a stronger incentive for bad actors.
Yeah.
So how frequently are you kind of attacked? And then perhaps if you can give us some indication of roughly, and I don't know if there's a metrics that you use of how much you kind of put into cyber prevention and kind of detection versus like profit or versus revenues, or how do you kind of explain that to the board and to the business?
Look, the attacks have been steadily increasing from 2 years ago when I started to where we are now. We are seeing a 400% increase in our attacks against us. And it is in millions a month, right? Sometimes that's used as a theatrical matrix as well, but the fact of the matter is when you see that steady growth, you understand that something is changing. And what does that really mean? I think very soon you'll see, in fact, we're starting to see it already. It used to be financial institutions are attacked or, telecoms are attacked. Look at the number of attacks that have happened on the government infrastructure just in South Africa.
Yeah.
Department of Deeds, Transnet, and I can give you a whole list.
Yeah.
And we have to understand why it's happening. And the simple answer is path of least resistance. Threat actors are becoming smarter as well, saying, yeah, we'll try our luck with the financial institutions and the large institutions, but where can I actually get in and get some data out, get some ransom out? And often, the weaker link is where they're going after now. And that's why the third-party risk becomes even more critical for us to understand.
Sure.
I think the color of money has also changed. It's no longer rands or dollars. It's Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, and.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter who you attack anymore. It's who can give you money.
Yeah.
Or Bitcoin, right? So I think that way attacks we've still seen increase against us. Regarding budget and so on, I've been very fortunate that Absa as a group takes cybersecurity very seriously, and the board takes it even more seriously.
Okay.
We've had no challenges in getting whatever I needed so far to protect the group, protect our customers, and do it in the right way. So I think budget proportions are always here or there. We benchmark ourselves globally against what kind of budgets are against a revenue kind of an organization, and we're well in those ranges. And I can always tell you the one thing which I've seen our board say is, if you need something, don't hold a budget or a red tape as a barrier.
Sure.
I'm very fortunate that I've got the direct line to the board chair, to our CEO, and our new CFO as well as the previous CFO. Always had the right support to protect the organization and our customers.
That's reassuring to hear. So I think, talking around that kind of the board and the internal kind of element. So I saw in another interview that you said cyber work is teamwork. But I think, and perhaps this is maybe a slightly outdated approach, but I think cyber was often seen as the kind of the restriction on the business, the kind of slowing things down, making things harder to get stuff done, and adding complexity. How is that? Is that still the case? How are you kind of resolving that within the business?
Having been a CIO, I had that exact view of our security department till I started running security. And can I tell you what the biggest reason for that view is? It's education or lack of it. And what I really mean by that is, when I started this role and having been a CIO, when I looked at some of the things I needed to do, I put on my CIO hat and I thought, what would I say? And what I found out very quickly was there's resistance from really good developers, smart guys, because they don't understand or see the context that a cybersecurity team sees. And that's why I've said teamwork is so critical. You have to understand the other person's side of the story, but don't forget to relay your side as well.
Sure.
And the cybersecurity teams have been bad at that, in my opinion. If you are wanting to do something, but a cybersecurity team says we're putting these controls in place, why those controls are being put in place is so critical to explain. And in plain English.
Yeah.
And with real examples. And I've seen when we've done that, we've had absolute success. In fact, we've had more collaboration from our developers to do the right thing, as opposed to sometimes when we've just done things without appropriate communication, without appropriate engagement. And sometimes you need to do that because of the emergency of the threat. That's when we've seen more resistance and unhappiness from the developers or the CIO side.
Mm-hmm.
But all in all, I've been blessed. Like I said, I've been at Absa Group. I've done an architecture role, I've done a production role, and I've been a CIO. So I'm able to understand the difficulty that I'm putting in those people's way and be able to talk to it and even moderate my team where they haven't, put in the right solution to put a better solution in place. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Are we making progress? Absolutely.
Okay. So then let's kind of go on to that and catch up from the previous topic that we kind of were talking about. I know that, so I spoke to Sandro Buccaneri, who was, I think, your predecessor. And I remember him telling me about some of the campaigns that were being run internally, beyond the kind of the technical team, but throughout the organization, throughout, I guess, to every layer of employee. But then I remember there was also a couple of videos on YouTube as well about awareness of getting calls or how to deal with various kind of cyber-related social engineering scams, probably. So is that still something that you're pioneering? Is that still something that you're pushing? Is that something that Absa is still kind of behind? And then the second part of the question is, how do we take that to the rest of the country? We, on one of the previous ITWeb TVs, we interviewed Panti Tlakula from the information regulator, and she said part of her role is to kind of help educate the population into about digital security and digital safety. And obviously that's a huge task. So I think probably all of the role players have to play a role. But yeah, what's your kind of take on those two?
Yeah, I think you're spot on, where everybody has to have an understanding of why this is important to us. Not to us as a bank or as a customer only, but as a country. You will have seen, and you will see, cybercrime is evolving into real world warfare. We still have a large portion of the country that is not digitally savvy.
Sure.
And elderly population, which often fall for these scammers and these threat actors. So we are totally behind trying to do as much as we can to inform our public. In fact, we do it on LinkedIn Live. We've done quite a lot of sessions. We're running like I said, a mindfulness campaign, not just for our customers, but for everybody. And I do believe this is something which all organizations at some level need to do. Because if we all do this, and it's coming to us as customers from all different angles, at least one will hit.
Hopefully.
Or hopefully.
Yeah.
Before the actual fraud hits or a cybercrime takes place. One of the things I didn't mention, which we are raising with our board as an emerging threat, is our mobile phones.
Sure. And
mobile security. Whilst our app might be well secured, ransom demands based on people clicking, downloading things, giving access to your photos, phone, this is becoming a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
So the alertness, the awareness that you talk about is critical, not just from a fraud perspective, but from a safety of human beings perspective.
Yeah.
There was a recent case in India where, in fact, there's a documentary on YouTube about it, where females were targeted by a syndicate to give microloans. But the way to get the microloans was to download an app, give access to your phone, photos. And India being a society which is very closed, if there were any compromising chats or photos or anything, they would send them to all their contacts, unless they paid up and there was a lot of suicides that started happening because of that. So it is that dangerous.
Yeah.
And that is why it is our responsibility to not only continue but accelerate this education for our customers and for the population as much as we can.
Okay. So coming back to your strategy, how are you keeping the banks and your customers' kind of assets and data safe? What are at a high level, if you could kind of give it a bullet point overview, what's the elevator pitch? What is your security strategy in a nutshell?
I never want to go into specifics, as you can understand.
Of course, but
for the right reasons.
Yeah.
But all I can tell you is we believe in layers of defense, like you hear from most cybersecurity organizations. We believe that there's got to be different layers of defense that we put in place, But not only that, just as important is detection. We have the mindset that something bad is happening or can happen, so we need to be able to detect what's happening in the organization. So we've actually put our team together with the likes of the NIST framework. So we have a team that does protect, another that does detect, and another that does respond, along with the other functions. And their ethos that we're building in that team is, your money is here, protect us. Somebody is in our system, can you detect them? Be ready to respond if there is a problem. And it is very practical way of looking after our customers. I'm a customer of Absa. I want to make sure my assets are protected,
of course,
just as much as anybody else. And I think that if you take your job seriously in the sense of owning it as if it's your own company, your own bank, your own world, then you put in the requisite rigor to do the right things. And again, one layer is never enough. For us, it's the defense in depth, which we follow.
Okay. And then I think the incident response plan, I'm assuming, I'm sure you've got many. How, when you're kind of trying those things out, how often would you involve, say, the communications team and the CEO in a theoretical, we've been hacked, let's do this exercise? How regularly would that involve, like, the key stakeholders?
Yeah, I think we have a quarterly board meeting in which cyber is specifically discussed. In fact, I have mine on Monday coming up. And we not only discuss, the cyber response plan is often seen as the silver bullet. I love the quote from Mike Tyson, everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the face, right? This is about the involvement of the right executives on a quarterly basis to understand the threats that are out there, understand where we still have to do more, and understand what their role needs to be at any given point in time. We have our standard operating procedure. I promise you, having run production incidents, not for cyber, but generally, you don't look for a chapter by chapter what to do. You have the right individuals, and if they are not well versed with the threat, with the consequences, and with the tools that are available to them, they will fail. So we try to keep our executives, the entire Group Exco, in fact, informed of, sometimes I think they hate me, I give them too much information about what's happening, not just in Africa, but globally. But it's important for them, and many of them have come back and said, I didn't know this was happening.
Yeah.
Or this attack vector, I didn't know about this. But it's important to keep them constantly informed and involved about the evolving threats. And I think that for me has been probably key to get the kind of support I get to protect the group.
Okay. You mentioned Africa there. And I think that's, I'm imagining that each of the different African operations faces different types of threats. I mean, obviously we're a global connected world, but are there kind of differences in what's happening in different countries at the different Absa operations? And what would you say are those? Which countries are perhaps facing the most types of threats and most worrying threats?
You know, I thought the exact same thing when I started this role, that different countries and different operations will have different types of threats. From my experience and the discussions I've had at the World Economic Forum and other CISOs across the globe, everybody's facing similar kind of threats.
Okay.
It's social engineering. It's wanting to get ransom, money out of you in some way or form, or taking your data. Those are the three.
Yeah. And
there's different ways that they're coming at it. But social engineering, if you look at some of the stats, 80-85% of all attacks, successful ransomware attacks, start with a phishing or social engineering attack vector. So I think if you remember, I made the statement, we look at all our assets in the same way, with the same level of protection and security. And that's our layered defense approach. You could be a customer in Zambia or in Botswana or here in South Africa. We have the same level of security controls across our group because our ethos is they're part of us.
Sure.
We're one bank, we're one group. We cannot have more controls in South Africa and less in Zambia. It doesn't make sense. And the threat actors will find that out very quickly.
Okay.
So it's important for us to have the same level of confidence in our controls across the group. Are the different countries facing different issues? Yes. I think if you look at the governments most recently that have been involved in the geopolitical climate that we're living in, there are different threat actors coming after different countries. Attribution is always difficult, but we've seen, Kenya, for example, was attacked by Anonymous Sudan for certain reasons. Mm-hmm. And Anonymous Sudan, as an hacktivist, is going after different organizations for different governments for different reasons. So I think the geopolitical arena is definitely changing the nature of the cyber threat. Mm-hmm. But globally, all threat actors are after those three things. It's your money, it's your data, it's wanting to disrupt your operations.
Okay. I think the geopolitical threat, that's the question I had down prepared. Obviously, the Ukraine the situation there, Gaza, what's going on there. How do things like that actually impact those on the much bigger scale? I think it's the chaos theory where a butterfly flaps its wings and affects something else the other side of the world. But how do those things affect us in South Africa or, as you say, the African operations?
Yeah. Well, as you know, there are various groups that operate for political reasons as well, not just financial reasons. Mm-hmm. Naturally, when you put yourself in the geopolitical arena, you are standing somewhere. And as South Africa, as you know, we took a stance of going to The Hague with Israel.
Yeah.
And naturally, that attracts different kinds of threats against the country's infrastructure and institutions and so on and so forth. Again, I believe those are just threat actors. The fundamentals of you wanting to secure yourself are still the same. Mm-hmm. And the threats might increase, decrease, depending upon the geopolitical situation. But the one constant is that attacks or cyber attacks are increasing globally. And that, for me, is the critical part that we worry about, is do we have the right levels of defense against the growing nature of these attacks? And are we at the forefront of the defense from them or not? So if something does happen, we try to be connected with, like I've mentioned a few times, the World Economic Forums and a few other organizations that we're part of. The reason we're connected with the global community is an attack that happens maybe in the US today, we can learn from and defend ourselves against in Africa before it arrives here. So it is critical for us to not think of ourselves as different, but as part of this global community that is being attacked.
Okay. There was a little joke we shared before we went on air. Well, I say a joke, but the idea that who's the CISO most concerned about? Is it and it's the answer is everyone, internal and external but who are you most concerned about, from the lone wolf hacker through to the hacktivists, as you mentioned, or organized criminals, or even state-sponsored attacks? Which one is most concerning to you?
I think the most concerning the most concern I have is around, and this is going to sound harsh, but if I develop an apathy towards being vigilant and my team develops an apathy towards being vigilant, I think that's the biggest threat that the bank can face.
Sure.
We will always have the threats coming from outside, inside, up, down, left, right. But the security team, for me, their absolute commitment to the job that is at hand. This is not a regular job. There's a high level of accountability and responsibility that sits in different jobs. But this is, for me, this is the first job in my career where I feel responsible, not just for the bank. Think about all the customers. And I take that responsibility very, sometimes too seriously. But if your security teams become lax, or they feel that they sleep well at night because they've done all that they can, that for me, that glass half full is probably the biggest threat.
Okay. And I guess it's a special kind of person that becomes part of a kind of security team, as you say. How are you kind of recruiting, building, developing skills, and finding the right people to staff that? I know that's a kind of global problem that we face, but I'm sure that you are working on that. What exactly are you up to?
Yeah, it's a constant challenge. I think I mentioned what is happening or has happened is burnout. Because of this job being what it is, that we're seeing a lot of people actually. The people who have never done this job want to be part of cybersecurity, and those that have been in cybersecurity are saying, "I want out now," because of the burnout rate that they've been facing. So the wellness of our organization depends on the wellness of the people that are running the organization. We've battled with that. I've battled with that because cyber skill is scarce. But it doesn't mean all cyber skills is scarce. And I often hear, we can't find cyber skills. There's different types of skills we need. What I find most probably difficult to maintain is skill that understands your environment, that has your context. And maintaining that skill and making sure that they don't burn out is probably the hardest part. We've been very fortunate, actually. We've been running, my predecessor started it, the Cyber Academy, in which we took 20 previously disadvantaged kids out of, through a rigorous process for 3 years, and allowed them to certify on cloud, networks, cybersecurity products we're using. And I'm very proud to say, they're now my employees. I got 18 new employees last year.
Okay.
And I have 18 more coming next year.
Okay, nice.
So we're building a good pipeline through that process. And many people are running such academies. The pitfall there is nobody wants to hire a non-experienced cybersecurity professional. So we can have a lot of academies and we can churn out a lot of skill. A lot of people, unfortunately, don't give them a chance. So it's a chicken and egg scenario.
Yeah.
You don't have cyber skills, but I only want senior cyber skills. But I don't want junior cyber skills. So how are they ever going to become senior?
Experienced, yeah.
So my message to all my peers, all the people that are running these academies is it's not good enough. In fact, when I started, I was going to shut down our academy. I thought, what's the point of doing this? And thankfully, my team, beat some sense in my head. And then I went and met these kids, and I can see there's a bright future for them. What was the hardest part is, are we going to employ them? And I won't lie to you, when they came out of the academy after 3 years and doing all these certifications, we had to push to get them employed because my own team did not want junior people.
Okay.
They said, no, we can get senior people. Why are we getting juniors to come do this job? And again, it's that chicken and egg scenario. And what we see now is a lot of these young kids, I call them kids, but they're now employees of Absa for more than a year.
Sure.
For a year now. They're doing really well. They're learning much faster. They're able to grasp concepts much quicker. And very soon, I can see a lot of them taking senior roles as we grow.
Okay. Nice.
But it's not easy, is what I'm saying. This is 4 or 5 years of commitment that Absa, and I've got to give credit to our group executive there, who never stopped this program. In fact, encouraged it and allowed it to continue, that we're building this skill. The hardest part is going to be, you're going to take somebody, make them cyber ready. Can you get them a job? Will people employ and take a chance on the youngsters? And I think that's the hardest part.
Okay. Just to circle back on one of the things you mentioned about the burnout, how do you ensure, like, obviously you only have a certain limited size of team and you want to keep them fresh, but how do you ensure, and you were kind of saying about keeping them, like, you want to make sure that they're interested and involved rather than becoming apathetic, but how do you get that right level of, I guess, not letting them burn out, but keeping them engaged?
I think it's I don't think I've got it right yet, to be very honest with you.
Okay.
We haven't had a lot of churn, but I think some of the interventions my team, who are better than me at this, are helping. We are starting with yoga classes now, meditation classes, in fact. And that idea came from the kids from the Maharishi Academy that we hired, because they were doing meditation and they saw that helped them calm themselves down,
okay,
and those kind of things. I think there was a movie night or movie day recently. It was a cyber movie, so
okay,
it was relevant.
Was it Hackers?
It was one of the Netflix movies which talked about how cybercrime was done. But it's when there is a bit of a gap, we need to take it, and we need to take advantage of it. And we're not really good at that all the time. But we're consciously now looking at opportunities that when there is a bit of a breather, that we don't put more on people's heads, because there's always more to do. But to also allow them a bit of a balance to maintain. When I get the right full solution, I'll let you know. But
okay.
I think we're trying, but we're not there yet.
Okay. So then going back to the little crystal ball, perhaps looking ahead into the future a bit. I know that Luno recently kind of got the license as a kind of crypto exchange as regulated regulated from the FSCA. And I think there's a couple of others who've also got their licenses. So we're seeing that kind of dial shifting more to acceptance, particularly among regulators, of cryptocurrencies. I know Absas kind of had discussions around it. I know nothing's come out, unless you want to reveal exclusively here. But if Absa were to say tomorrow, we want to offer cryptocurrencies, what would be your next steps? What are the kind of plans that you would have to go through, or the steps you'd have to go through to make that a reality?
Yeah, I think you mentioned a statement earlier. How do you make sure that the cybersecurity team doesn't become the brakes or doesn't stop things from happening? So my view around cryptocurrencies is immaterial. My job is to protect every line of business that Absa decides to move into.
Sure.
And actually, it's just another asset.
Okay.
If you really think about it, right? It's servers on which there's software, on which there's transactions happening. And we've been doing that for years. So I'm not too worried about these new lines of businesses. Mm-hmm. But what it does mean is our profile as a country changes for threat actors.
Okay.
And we just need to be aware of that. And we need to be, I guess, plugged in to where, these instruments are already live. Is there anything nefarious we've seen, any different types of attacks, and how do we protect ourselves? So definitely go into more research mode, more collaboration mode with global peers to understand if there's anything different. We believe our defense in depth strategy is going to be the same. And as I said, the attacks are just increasing, but we have to be responsive to that, I guess.
Okay. And then I think probably the last future-looking question that I want to talk to you about is probably 5 years ago. I was fortunate enough to go to Microsoft in Seattle, and we were presented to by one of their kind of heads of their quantum computing kind of labs. Now that's obviously, from what they were telling me at the time, it's quite far away still. I think there's progress obviously being made, and the tech industry is obviously renowned for overhyping things before they're actually ready. But is that, and perhaps this is a similar answer to the cryptocurrency, but is that something that you're starting to think about? I I guess the big threat of it is that potentially quantum computing can crack cryptography as it stands now, like that. And as soon as it goes live, I mean, I'm sure there's market dynamics which are going to make it impossible or very hard for bad actors to kind of get access to it. But assuming it went live, can you prepare for it? How are you preparing for that kind of threat?
Yeah. So it is one of the emerging threats that we are tracking very closely. And we're actually working with a few of the players in the market who are at the forefront of this technology. They're calling it Q0, the day quantum becomes commercially available.
Okay.
And when I heard about this 2 years ago, it was 10 years away. When I talked to some of my partners now, it's 3 to 5 years away.
Okay.
So it's not that far in the future. And we have actually started understanding what does it mean because it's very easy to also overhype it, like you said, right? We need to understand what its threat actually is. And naturally, we're working with the cryptography partners and so on and so forth, because they're very worried about it.
Okay.
So we have a lot of technologies that we are using that are, global giants that are actually working on this quite heavily. And we're trying to make sure that we, understand their plans on securing us with their technologies, but where it can impact us, so the gap analysis of what does it actually mean for us, we've already started looking at.
Okay.
So it's not something in the very
immediate future,
far future. We believe it's something we need to start looking at seriously now.
Okay.
And we've started already.
Okay. And then you mentioned the emerging threats. What would be some of the others that you're kind of...
Yeah, I think quantum would be definitely one which is on the radar. Mobile security for me, I think, is something that people are underestimating, not just from a organization perspective, like I said, from a human perspective. I think the other big one is the speed at which technology is being developed, and I'll say it here, maybe it's not right, but not tested appropriately before going out to the market.
Sure. Which
opens us to 0-day vulnerabilities and so on, I think is increasing as well. So I am worried that if you look at the trend of vulnerabilities that we needed to patch to where we are now has increased drastically, which means threat actors get openings more and more. And I think that is an emerging theme that we need to tackle with our partners globally, that they need to be more responsible for it.
Okay. Manoj, that's been fascinating. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Remember, please do share, like, and subscribe if you've enjoyed what Manoj and I have been chatting about today. Until next time, stay safe. This episode of ITWeb TV is brought to you by ITWeb Security Summit, the must-attend gathering for IT, security, and business decision makers. For more information, visit itweb.coza.